I'm Scott Allen Miller, and this is my everyday life living in León, Nicaragua. Today, I want to touch on a business concept that really impacts a lot of people who are considering opening a business abroad. And living here in Nicaragua, a lot of people that I talk to are interested in potentially having a business, maybe one that they're going to work at. And there's just a little bit of how you need to think about that may be important for calculating whether or not you are profitable in a way that could be really meaningful. A lot of people make a mistake with this, probably because they have never had a business like this before, where they are mixing the idea of investing and working in their own business. And sometimes this can lead to some misunderstandings by people as to whether or not they're being profitable, and that can put you at a little bit of risk, or at least a misunderstanding of how well your business is doing. So I know that's a little bit ambiguous. We're going to dig into what we mean and why this is important for someone who is coming down here to Nicaragua, or really to anywhere, and you're looking at doing this, maybe a retirement investment or a way to, pay for your family to live abroad. Just so you have some good thought processes so you can make good decisions about what you're doing in the future. All right, we're going to get to that right after the bump. Okay, so what the heck am I talking about? What is this way to look at business that's so important? So when I'm talking to people who are looking at starting a business, they're often looking at total amount of money flowing through a business. That's not really how we look at things. So let's start with looking at straight investments. This could be putting money into the stock market. This could be investing in your buddy's business. He's like, I'm starting up this new business. I'm trying to raise some funds. You got $100,000 for me. I could make this amazing business and pay you dividends once we get profitable. Or you're a venture capitalist, you're putting money into a startup or so forth. There's lots of different ways this could go, or it could even be just interest off of a mutual fund, or even a savings account, or a CD, something like that. Bonds, for that matter. Lots of different things. We're going to move just a little bit so you can see my crazy dog eating a coconut over my shoulder. And so when we're looking at any of these things, we're looking at pure profits. I don't mean that the whole system is pure profits. You could totally lose money. Absolutely. That's how you make money, is that there is risk involved, of course. So that's an important thing to understand. But these dogs are so funny. This one is chewing the coconut, and this one's just wandering around because he's just generally interested in where there's a coconut for him. Anyway, we'll put him back on. There we go. So did he lay down? He's upside down. This is my dog. Okay. So when you're looking at any of these investments, let's say you take $100,000. That's a pretty big investment, but some of you may do this. You put $100,000 into X investment. You then do nothing with it. Maybe you occasionally check up to see how it's doing because you want to make sure it's returning good money, but you're really just letting it do its thing. If that was in the stock market, every so often you get a statement saying how much dividends you've been paid, and every so often you probably have to pay taxes on that. If it was in your friend's business, something similar would happen at some random time. Hopefully some money would come to you. Maybe it won't be for a while. And in some cases, maybe you put money in, you wait, and then at some point, this is how venture capitalists often work, you decide to sell that business because it's worth more and someone's willing to buy it off of you, and then you make your money then. But in all these cases, you've put money in, say $100,000 went in, and as long as things went well, at some point in the future, money came out that is equal to or greater than the money you put in. So that's how you make money on it. So just as an example, pretty standardly, if you put $100,000 into the S&P 500, in 10 years, you'll take $200,000 out. That's just very rough numbers, and it's no way guaranteed, and past performance is not an indicator of future performance, and blah, and blah, and blah. And I'm not a financial advisor, but the point is that is how those things work, and you expect that you're going to get that return and that you will have to do nothing to get that money except for doing that investment. This is called having your money work for you. So very important. And everyone's like, yes, I get that, Scott. Why do you have to explain that? Well, it's because the alternative is where things get confusing. You have to establish that this is what an investment looks like. Now you want to start your own business. Now, let's say you want to start a restaurant, for example. You have same $100,000, but now instead of investing it in someone else, you want to invest it in yourself. Well, if we were to mimic what we're talking about, you would take that $100,000 and you would use it to create a business, to start a business. And if you want to truly mimic those other things, you would need to hire a manager, a CEO, all those different roles who are then going to build that business for you. Of course, you've got to set it up enough to put the money in, and then you would not be involved in any way whatsoever, and every so often you'd be handed a check for whatever profits were made from that business. And if you did it well, at the end of 10 years, you would have made at least as much as if you'd have put the money into the S&P 500. Or maybe it's just fun saying you own something and you're willing to earn a little bit less during that time. Not a problem. That's great. Or maybe you want to like invest in something green, or you want to invest in a specific market, do a specific amount of good. A lot of people who are looking to invest here in Nicaragua are interested in ecologically sound investing and directly helping by employing Nicaraguans or so forth. Or maybe you're doing it because you want to get residency, and you know that investment is a path to residency, and a good one, which gives you a little bit more flexibility, a little bit easier to do in some cases. The other things, fantastic. Those are all great great things to want to do, and a great way to do it. So that's perfect. But in most cases, when you do that, you're going to want to monitor that business a little bit. So chances are you're going to be a little bit more involved and spend some of your time, rather than if you're just using a mutual fund or something, you're going to put zero effort in. You're just going to be looking to see if you like the amount of money that's coming out of it. You're not checking to see if they're really operating a mutual fund or if they're mismanaging your money. I mean, maybe you are, but 99.999% of the time, that's not what happens. They're regulated. You just put the money in and let it go. When it's your own business, you have some risks. Someone could embezzle your money. They could invest it poorly. It could just not be a good investment. You need to pay attention to that and figure out when to, cut and run, so forth. But if you were to invest in your own business, that is what it would look like. And so that is not what most people mean when they say invest in their own business. What they actually mean, and I'm a person who invested in my own businesses long ago, and I did not do it like that. I did it the more common way, so this is exactly my case. I started my first business as not a business that I intended to ever pull dividends out of. Of course, I wanted to. I'm not saying I was ever intending to. There's a big gap there. What I intended to do with my business was provide myself a place where I wanted to work. My business partner and I, Andy West, if you ever want to look him up, he and I looked into lots of different businesses. We had worked in our field for a long time, and we had found that we loved the work, but we hated the places that we worked. They treated us badly, and there was a lot of internal politics. We thought if we had our own firm and farmed ourselves out as a consulting firm, but basically farming ourselves out as consultants through our own firm, we would have more political power, we'd have more flexibility, and some protections, and some negatives as well. There's a lot of risk to it, and a lot of stress, and trying to build a business, and a lot of things you can do wrong, sure. But in general, we were looking at a way to simply create better employment for ourselves. We weren't goaled after profits. We were goaled after just improving our salaries. We were trying to make our jobs more pleasant and easier to move from one contract to another, because we were contract workers. So the idea that we would get a permanent job really wasn't something we wanted. We took contracts that might be for a weekend or a week or 6 months, but they would still be contracts with a definite end date. And when you're a individual contractor trying to go out and find the next contract to take over as close as possible to when one ends can be difficult. But when you own a firm, it's just more flexible. It gives you a little bit more power, and it makes doing your paperwork a lot easier, because in theory, you have a company that can hold money and decide how to disperse it and when to disperse it. It's more flexible, but more work again. But so in that case, we weren't investing towards getting returns on that investment. That was not exactly what the investment was. Any investment that we put in was for creating a framework for us to just go to work. So that's a different thing. It was our labor that was involved. That's still what we were selling. Now, over time, after about a year or two, we brought on John Stevens, the surfing IT wizard, as we jokingly refer to him as. He came on as employee number one to the company after about 2 years. And at that point, we had someone to pay. And hopefully when we paid him, there would be, we got a bit of wind. We would have a little bit of profits. And then in theory, we could make some money that way. It was very, very tiny numbers at the time. But it was growth, and now we have employees, and it's a different thing. So we start acting more like a real company, and that is a great way to go. We're still working full time. Both Andy and I worked for ever. As long as Andy was with the company, he worked full time, and I've been working full time for 26 years. So it's very straightforward. That is a framework for us to work there. But once we started adding other employees, there started to be this concept of it also being an investment, and of not require you to have employees to do that. But as a consulting firm, essentially that's how it's going to work. It's not like a restaurant where the restaurant could make money and you're not there working all the time. It's when you're just a consultant, if you're not working, you're not earning. So it's more of a straight salary proxy than anything else. But as we grew and started adding employees, and it didn't take too many years before we had many more employees than the original 2 people, right? So maybe we had 2 people that owned the company and 6 employees. As those employees worked, there was profits, and those profits or returns on our original investment. So there's two ways to be looking at this income. One is our salary. So if we were pulling in a salary, let's say we're making $50,000 a year, which would have been incredible back then, bringing in $50,000 a year as salary is not a return on our investment. We could, in theory, say, well, had we not invested in this company, we just worked for other companies directly, we would have done so at lower cost. We wouldn't have to have made the initial investment to set up the firm and all that, but we would probably be earning slightly less, maybe $45,000, maybe $40,000. It could be a number like that. In theory, we could guesstimate that a certain amount of our salary was an increase because there was this business to be able to pay us better. That's legitimate. So you could fudge the numbers and call that a return on your investment. That's valid, but you're fudging things a little bit because it's not technically what it is, but no one's going to complain if that's how you're using the term. But what really is a return on our investment is if there's profits beyond our own salaries. Now, you can then change how you're paid out. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about before you're actually calculating the profits of the company and how they're going to be divided. Behind the scenes, in the accounting sector, at some point, there is money generated by your labor. You go out, you work, you do an hour of work, you get paid for that hour. Or you do, it doesn't have to be necessarily hourly, but you understand it's you doing labor and you being paid a salary. You would do it whether you worked for someone else or worked for yourself. And if you didn't do it, someone else would have to do it for you. That's a salary you need to get paid just as like any other employee. So you're treating yourself as an employee of your own business. And that's fantastic. That's a great way to go. But it's important to understand that that's what it is. If that business at which you are self-employed generates profits, meaning you're paying yourself $50,000, that's a reasonable salary, that's what you'd be paid somewhere else, and then you bring in more money than that. So you bring in $100,000 and there's no one else to give that money to. At the end of the year, that becomes a profit to you. Again, it doesn't have to be the end of the year, just an example. You then take a total of $100,000 in, $50,000 from your labor as an employee, $50,000 as the company made profits that it didn't need to spend on anything else at the end of the year, and you now have a total income of $100,000. In that situation, you could say that you made a $50,000 on salary and $50,000 on return on your investments, on actual dividends. Using that methodology, you can then do calculations as to whether or not this is a valuable business. Meaning, if you put in, say, $100,000 to create this business, and at the end of the year you're getting investment returns of $50,000, that's an incredible number. That's 50% profits on that investment. So from an investment perspective, it's fantastic, as long as your salary is also good. But you have to understand that you are working to make that happen. So the $50,000 that you're making as salary is not part of your profits. You could go take a job, say, if you're here in Nicaragua like me and you want to work in the United States, you could go get hired by any company, get $50,000 as salary from them, and not have to make any investment whatsoever and get that amount of money. So that is not something that you can use in the calculation of your profits. So why is this important? Well, let's say that like many expats, especially retirees who move to a new country, like here in Nicaragua, and they want to start up a business. And often they think, well, I'm going to start up a hotel or restaurant. And they say, okay, I'm going to take, let's say I have $100,000. That would be really small, but let's just say we have $100,000 that's currently in a mutual fund. It's making so much per year. We're going to take that money out. Let's say it's making a 10%. So it's making $10,000 per year, just free money flowing into your accounts. And we're going to take that $100,000 and instead we're going to buy a really small, well, a good-sized restaurant with that money. And instead we're hoping that that restaurant will give us more than $10,000 of profits throughout the year. That's fantastic. Well, if that can do more than $10,000 in profits, then that is a great way to go. Or if it's just fun and it comes in close, also great way to go. But chances are you're going to work in that restaurant. So in the case of the mutual fund, you were not working. That $10,000 would happen. If you had to go into the hospital, if you were in a coma, if you just any terrible thing, if you died, it could be passed on to your beneficiaries. No matter what, that's going to just keep generating that money. Your input is not required. If you have that restaurant, your input may be required. If something tragic happens to you, you may lose that source of income, that it may not be able to make those profits. And if you are actively working, like you really put in time, not just you have to oversee it, but you're actually spending 15, 20, 30, 40, 80 hours per week working in that business. You have to consider, are you paying yourself a salary? How much of your time are you actually being paid as an employee of your business? And then once you've removed that, is there profits? Now, if it's all fun and you're doing this and you don't care about those profits and you're saying, look, I've built myself a framework for making money and I'm able to work 60 hours a week running this restaurant. That's what I want to do. And it's my hobby. I don't care. Whatever makes you happy. But from a financial perspective, you have to understand that you could have, left your $100,000 in a mutual fund, keep getting that $10,000 dividend every year without doing anything. And you could have taken some kind of job with someone else and probably earned more than you would make working in your own restaurant. And then you would have had that higher income and the dividends from that same investment at lower risk. So it's important that when we're gauging the profitability of a venture like this, that we consider what we're paying ourselves as salary and consider the profits beyond that as the return on our investment, so that we can put the two together and say, is this a valuable decision for me to have made? And I think so many people who are often doing their very first business somewhere abroad, because there's just this huge emotional drive to start a business when you go to a new place. I don't know why this is, but we seem to all have it. And when you do that, it's so common that I see people saying, yeah, we're very profitable. And you say, okay, where are you making profit? And they're like, well, are you actually taking profits? You're paying taxes on profits that have come in? Well, no, I'm taking everything as salary. Okay, is that a reasonable salary? Or are you hiding your profits in salary? Which is fine, because you pay taxes on your salary. So you're paying taxes either way. This is not a tax dodge. It is a structuring of how to do payments. Not a problem. But when you're deciding if it's profitable, you have to look at where these numbers really are. So if you were to, for example, if I want to take a job in the United States, I could go get a job paying $50,000, or I could work in my restaurant making $50,000. Those are, I can't possibly have my restaurant pay me that, but you get the idea. So in both those cases, my salary is for my labor. Then if my restaurant makes more returns than the money I put into that restaurant would have made had I done something else, then it's profitable. If it makes the same, then it's a break even, but still profitable, just not better than the other things you would have done. If it doesn't make as much, then in some ways it's actually losing money, because you had a safe way to make more money than that. So you want to be very careful. So many people don't run these calculations. They merge them all together and say, well, I work full time. And this comes up quite often because, we'll look at an example business and people will say, well, they're making money. I can make money too. And we'll say, wait a minute. So those people, we don't know all their financials, but we're pretty sure that they are actually losing money, but not losing so much that they're not willing to do it. They may be happy doing it. They may be doing it just because they can't sell the business. They may be hopeful that in the future they'll make profits. But most of the time that people say, well, look at this successful business, we look at it and our estimate is that they are not actually getting any profits. They are themselves, the owners, working often full-time, often very hard at these businesses, putting in loads of their own labor, and at the end of the day, yes, able to pay themselves something. And many people use the profits mechanism as a way to pay themselves. So, for example, I could, and I do this, work in my own business. I don't get paid for working in my own business. I only get paid by the business making profits, theoretically, if it was ever to happen, and then getting those returns as a way to getting actual income to justifying having had that business. So it's tempting to look at these things and say, well, positive cash flow is happening, therefore it's profitable. But that is not at all the case. In many cases, people are not getting a salary but have to work full time, so those profits represent their salary. So if you have a business, you put in $100,000, you're working full time at that business, and it brings in $10,000 after all of your costs. You're able to give yourself a bonus at the end of the year of $10,000. You have to stop and say, okay, I just worked a full-time job for $10,000 per year. Is that something I'm happy doing? And if it still comes out as something you want to do, by all means, do what makes you happy. But if you're trying to make a financial calculation, you just worked full time for an amount of money you could have made without working at all. Your labor was 100% burned. You didn't make a penny from all that work you did. You just made it possible to earn your investments in some other manner. So it's a complete loss. And that's where people often miscalculate what is and isn't profit. And I can tell you with our own businesses, we're often like the ones that are here abroad, not our core businesses. We often look at it and say, wow, we put in a ton of work. We've invested all this time. We're constantly stressed and doing stuff. And is it making profit? And at the end of the year, we're like, no, it's not really making profit. And then we're ignoring the fact, more or less, we are very aware of it, that multiple people are working often many hours, sometimes full time, and not being paid. And the only pay is the fun of having owned the business. Now, we are aware of that, and we make the decision to keep doing it anyway. And yes, we have some hope that there'll be actual profits in the future. There's hope that we'll have to work in it less as time goes on. But realistically, we understand that we are doing tons of work without being paid, and our profits are way below what they should be. So when you evaluate it, you say that is not a profitable business. But like I said, many businesses are bringing in enough money that it can keep functioning. They're not losing so much money, but they're losing compared to if they did other things. If they invested the same money that they used to buy the place somewhere else, they would have earned more dividends. If they were to work somewhere other than their own business, they would make more salary. And so that makes it viable to be sustainable in theory, but it is not profitable. It is still running at a loss, whether it's a hard loss or a relative loss, it is still running at a loss. So I just want to give you this mental tool set to visualize your business or your business plans so that you can make a good decision as to how to be able to survive in a new place. Because you come to Nicaragua or any place, it is so tempting to start up a business. It is so tempting to be emotionally tied to that desire to have a business that it's very common to overlook the financial realities and not make sound decisions, or to only do so after many years and then realizing you've actually lost possibly your nest egg, possibly a huge portion of your life, and often have invested in something that you don't have a way to get out of, because now that you've been running at minimal profits or possibly a loss for a long time, that makes that potential business that much less valuable for the next person who may be interested in trying the same thing. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you most certainly may do so and help keep this from being too much of a loss. We have a couple ways you can do it. One is by joining the channel with the join button down below, or you can hit the buymeacoffee.com/Scott Alan Miller link, which is in the show description, in the show notes, or just type it into your browser and you can buy me a coffee, which is very much appreciated. We have a lot of cost and time and effort in doing this show, and it really does make a big difference, all of the donations that you guys make. We appreciate you so much. And of course, you can hit the like button, watch another episode, tell someone about the show, share this with people, post it on social media, and I will see all of you tomorrow.